Okay, we're having today here Mr. Jeff. Mr. Jeff is representing, he is co-founder from Universita Foundation. We are going to talk a little bit more about it in a few times. Jeff, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm really pleased to have you here in this podcast.
It smells so good here at Mini Cake. It's hard to stay focused.
Yeah, yeah, but we're going to try to, okay?
Okay, let's try.
Jeff, we are going to talk about your foundation, but before that, I would like to talk about the person that is behind this foundation, which is Jeff Lair. Tell us something about your background, where does Jeff come from? Because I think it's important to talk about this because there might be some people over here in Mazatlan who are English speaking people or even Mexican people who wants to know more about this foundation and how they can help and they will know who the person behind it. So tell us a little bit more.
Okay, well, I'm from Seattle, Washington originally. I've been coming to Mazatlan for over 20 years. Fell in love with it the very first time. I'm a retired contractor.
How do you know about Mazatlan?
Well, I was a timeshare owner at one of the timeshares
Really?
here, and
Where?
I came here at Torres Mazatlan
Okay.
out in Cerritos, and we love it. We actually live, my wife and I married a Mexican lady here
Yeah.
whom I met when I was down here. We live about 3 blocks from Torres Mazatlan. I pass it every day a couple of times, and I just love Mazatlan, the culture, the people, the food, the music scene, and there's just a great family atmosphere here in Mazatlan that I felt very comfortable from the very first time.
When was the first time you came here?
1999.
Okay.
1999. It was right before the attack on the towers in
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
It was at the start of the year before the attack. Or was that in 2001? Whenever year that was.
Yeah.
I've been coming for a couple of years, and when that happened, of course, everything stopped.
Yeah.
And but my activity in the United States at that time I was a contractor, but I had crews that went all over the place, and I had trucks.
Okay.
And so I would use the trucks to collect wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, canes, used mobility equipment
Okay.
when we were out at a job site. If someone had something to donate,
Okay.
I would swing the crew by after the job was over and bring it back to the warehouse.
Where did you donate all that equipment?
Here in Mazatlan, mostly. We've donated throughout Sinaloa. We've had donations. That association still runs today. I was one of the founders of that organization.
Okay.
I'm retired from it.
Okay.
But during those years, we donated over 5,000 wheelchairs throughout Sinaloa, in Los Mochis, in Equilite, in Rosario. I don't think we ever went to Escuinapa.
Throughout all the states.
Concordia, yeah, Villa Union.
Okay. So you
And-
know all those places, right?
Yeah, most of them. I led over 40 teams of gringos that came down from the US.
Okay.
And I was usually I was always the tour guide, the host, I guess, if you will. And and unless we had a Mexican American person with us or someone who was bilingual, I was usually the voice of the group. So I would arrange for tours of the local hospitals or clinics. Many of these people who came with us were students in occupational or physical therapy.
Okay.
And they were in their mastery courses, to get their master's degree.
Well,
But in the U.S., you can't lay hands on somebody and actually physically lay hands on someone without a lot of restrictions.
why not?
Well, estamos mariposas, ¿sabes? We're a very litigious society
Okay.
in the United States, and if something were to go wrong, it would be easy to blame it on a student.
Oh,
Okay.
my God. Yeah.
So for
That's too risky for them.
risky for them, risky for everybody. But down here, we would bring them here to Mexico, and they could practice what they were studying without the same restrictions.
Okay.
And so the person who was receiving the therapy would receive the benefit, and the students would also receive the benefit. So it was truly a win-win situation. In addition, we would donate wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, and canes always to people of bajos recursos, of what we would call extremely low income.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people who don't have a floor in their house, people
Oh
who
my
don't
God.
have a door, okay, in invasion communities, squatter communities, people who have no chance of receiving a wheelchair unless it were to be donated by someone.
Okay.
So that was our target audience. If you can buy a wheelchair, God bless you. Do it. Do it. In the U.S., there's kind of a culture of donating. There are also some benefits in many insurance policies will let you buy new equipment in a certain period of time. And so there's a certain kind of a pay it forward mentality that is more prevalent in the U.S. than it currently is in Mexico. It's growing in Mexico.
You can notice the difference, right?
Do you think that I'm right about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Currently, but I see more and more of it all the time. One of the things we do with Fundación Libercita, the Libercita Foundation, if you want to say it in English,
Okay.
is we ask people, we don't make it a requirement, but we ask people when we donate the equipment, we say, when your rehabilitation is done and you no longer need the wheelchair, or if your medical condition changes, please give us back the wheelchair and we will restore it one more time and find someone else who needs it.
Yeah.
Because there's always more need than there is solution.
Yeah, and then you can help more people with the same equipment, right?
Right. So I live now here in Mexico. I've been down here close to 4 years. I married a beautiful Mexican lady whom I met at a donation event
Really?
many years ago.
What's it called?
What's my wife's name?
No, the donation event.
The donation event was for Push International,
Okay.
and it was at a local cerebral palsy for children's center here in Mazatlan called Padres y Compadres.
Oh yeah, I have heard about it.
Yeah, it's pretty famous. It's one of the better ones here in Maz for sure. And we had a long-standing relationship with Padres y Compadres, and so anyway, so we would have donation events during the week when we brought a team of gringos down here. And I met my wife, Lilia, and I met Liviercita. I met Livier. Her name is Livier.
That's why the name of the foundation.
That's where the name comes from, Livier. It's a French name. The diminutive in Spanish is Ita or Cita, and so that's why she became Livier Cita.
Yeah.
We always called her that. She was a premature baby. She was a twin. Born with many, many medical complications, including hydrocephalia, cerebral palsy. She was nearly blind. She lived with us until she passed when she was about 8 years old. Always ate out of a bottle. She was like an infant of 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
She never spoke. But she could communicate with her, like a baby communicates, with a loud cry or change of facial expressions. Yeah. And anyway, so Lilia, my wife, brought Liviercita to receive her first wheelchair at this event. Okay. And then I wasn't in contact with either one of them for a number of years, continued on the work in Seattle collecting wheelchairs and coming down 3 or 4 times a year. And then a number of years later, Livier, just like every other kid, she grew out of her wheelchair. Okay. Do your kids grow out of their shoes and pants and shirts and everything?
No, I don't think so.
Your kids grow out. Yeah. I've seen them grow. And Livier grew too. So she needed a new wheelchair. And she went back to the same association. She received a second wheelchair. Okay. Lilia, my wife, wrote a beautiful thank you note on the Facebook page of the association, which I read. And I was looking at the thank you note, and I saw a very highly educated, intelligent, diplomatic, smart lady. Many of the people that we were giving wheelchairs to, if you live in a house with no floor and no roof and stuff, probably have very little education, or you certainly didn't have very many opportunities in your life. Yeah. Well, this lady had opportunities, and I met her after the second donation, when it was the 10-year anniversary of Push International.
Was it love at first sight?
No, it wasn't, but she surely impressed me she impressed me, her intelligence impressed me, and still does. So we continued to talk. She was, we invited her to, one of the things we always did with teams of gringos is we would try to, I mentioned we took them to hospitals and clinics. We would try to give them the opportunity to talk with somebody who was actually living with a disabled person here in Mexico. because many of these graduate students, they have many questions. They're going into health, into the health industry. What is it like to live in Mexico with a disabled person? What is access like, accessibility? What are medical services like? What are the challenges from day to day to live with a person with disabilities? And there are many, no matter where you live. But if you live in the communities that we were serving with this organization, it's 10 times harder. And so we invited Lilia to come and talk to the group for a question and answer period, which she did.
Did you help her translating all the situation?
Yeah, I did the translation for her at that time.
Okay. Where do you learn the Spanish, by the way?
Well, I learned a little bit of Spanish in 2 years in high school, but I'd never used it.
Okay.
And I went to Italy when I was in college, and I tried to transfer my Spanish into Italian. I failed miserably when I first arrived, but when I left at the end of my year, the last thing I did was I worked as a translator in Italian.
Oh, okay.
And I loved the Romance languages.
Yeah.
So then many years later, when I got involved with the organization, I had to relearn my Spanish,
Okay.
which was horrible.
You relearned over here, right?
I relearned here in Mazatlan.
Okay.
And so my vocabulary started out to be completely limited to where does it hurt, which hip is fractured, what ankle is broken.
The basic things you needed to know to live here, right?
Yeah. Well, no, the basic things I needed to bring a person a wheelchair, to give a person a wheelchair, to select the right wheelchair for them. But that was my limit, was very limited. So when I came back down at the 10-year anniversary, my wife at that time was, among other things, she was a radio broadcaster. And she had a radio show, and she invited me to come and kind of do what we're doing here today on her radio show.
What was called the radio show?
It was good. The program was called Hablemos Claro, and it was and it was on the Eco
The
channel.
high school, right?
Yep, based out of the high school. And so
You were starting to talking with her, to departing some time with her and stuff, right? Over there.
yeah, so I invited her after going to the interview. I really learned how smart she was and what kind of life experience she had had. And so I invited her to come and be the person that spoke to the Gringo group with the team that happened to be down there at that time. And at the end of every week, we would ask the team, what did we do well? What can we do better for the next team? Everybody on that team said the best part of the week was the time they had asking Lilia questions about what it was like.
They were learning too much with her.
They were learning so much, and she was so honest and straightforward about it. They learned so much.
About the real reality down here, no?
What it was like to have Liviera at home every day, the challenges of life.
So Jeff, when did you start this kind of philanthropy job over here in Mexico?
So between the time that when I retired from collecting wheelchairs in Washington State, I was the source for most of the collected equipment. When I moved to Mexico, that source stopped. And so when I married Lilia, and for the past several years, we had been, they say, canalizar, which means to channel, or you would say in English more like a recycling.
It's too painful, right, for the people who is living that kind of thing, no?
Yeah, sometimes a person down here will receive a second wheelchair from a different organization, or they're older. If they knew Lilia and they knew Livier from having lived down here so many years. And when we started publishing that we were looking to help people with wheelchairs, out of the woodwork came donations. Hey, we have this old wheelchair that's been sitting in the patio. Would you like that? And so we would receive that, refurbish it, and then turn around and donate it. But that was our only source of wheelchairs, were recycled wheelchairs that were already down here.
So you were bringing those wheelchairs from USA?
No, those were chairs that were already here. Okay, so we're talking about the Fundación now. So here in during the last year, we have become partnered with a Mexican association
Okay.
that does the same thing, but brings the wheelchairs all the way here to Mexico, outside of Mexico City. And we've been fortunate enough to invite them to donate to us wheelchairs that we can give here in Mazatlan because they're 11 hours away.
But you need to go over there to Mexico City to pick them up and then come back here with them?
No. So they're brought into Mexico City. There's a huge warehouse there. Currently, there's about 1,000 wheelchairs in that warehouse.
Okay.
And then we pay the freight for what we need from Mexico City here to Mazatlan.
I see.
And we have a warehouse here in Mazatlan that we operate out of.
Okay.
At the current time, the only wheelchairs that we have about 60 in stock. They're all adult wheelchairs. There are no pediatric wheelchairs at the moment.
Okay.
This is something that we want to expand on because a child needs to participate in the life of a child.
And then you can educate the child since he's just a child, and then the culture is going to be different when he's grown, right?
Right. If a child can be part of everyday life, although they might use a wheelchair, if they can be part of their friend's life, go to birthday parties, go to all of the family events, then they grow up with the expectation that they should be included, and they have a right to be included.
Yeah.
S- Um,
I feel we don't have that kind of culture, unfortunately, down here in Mexico. Maybe in USA.
also growing. Also growing.
Yeah, also growing. How's in USA?
Well, maybe a generation ago, the generation before me, this is my personal opinion,
Okay.
there were a lot of institutionalized children. During my adolescence, there was a program, a project, the concept of mainstreaming children. That is to take children with special needs and put them in the rest of the population. So the rest of the population can see them, be with them, not be afraid of them,
Okay.
and that these children can be incorporated in daily social life like every child should be.
Yeah.
So that happened maybe in the 60s, in the late 50s and 60s, but it took a while.
And how about now?
Oh, it's very active now. It's very active now. It's
Okay.
dominant in the U.S. now.
Really?
Yeah. So that's still happening down here. It's growing. It's a few years behind down here, but it's growing here. And that's good. I have my sister-in-law is a special needs teacher, for example.
Really?
Yeah. So, we're trying to, kids have a right, not only a right as a human right, but it's also the law, right? It's the law here that those people should not be marginalized, should not be set aside or pushed aside in any way. They should be integrated into the life of the rest of society, their families, their friends. And I feel very strongly about that, and so does my wife. And for that reason, we wanted to do something more with this new capacity that we have to bring wheelchairs. As I say, right now they're only adult wheelchairs, but this is a goal. So if you want to help, you could help us get pediatric wheelchairs down here.
Yeah.
One of the problems is they're much more expensive than adult wheelchairs,
Yeah.
and so that limits some people's ability to help. But there are pediatric wheelchairs. There are specialty wheelchairs for kids that are very medically involved and delicate children. Those things are available. We lack resources to acquire those chairs right now, but we don't lack resources to distribute them
Okay.
because there's always need down here. So if you want to help,
Okay.
that's an area where you can help right now.